Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts. Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
I am free, I am free, I am free every day of my life. I am free, 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 free. When I wake up in the morning or I lay my head to rest, I am free, I am free, I am loved, I am loved, yeah, every day of my life. I am loved, 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 loved. When I wake up in the morning or I lay my head to rest, I am loved, I am loved, I am blessed, I am blessed, I am blessed every day of my life. I am blessed, 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 blessed. When I wake up in the morning or I lay my head to rest, I am blessed, 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 and you are.
Thank you. Whoa, there's a step there. So we have two things that we offer here at Unity. We offer the teaching of unity and the community. Since we've taken a little bit more time to talk about the community, I'm going to condense the teaching a little bit today. But we do have something to say about this idea of sacred service and volunteering. We do hold it as a spiritual practice. But first, a short joke. Pastor Phillips was known for orating. He would go on, and he felt like the longer he spoke, the more powerful his messages became. That's his personal belief. I know other ministers that are like that. I'll try not to be that today. And he noticed that Brother Bob got up and left, and toward the halfway through his sermon, and they came back in time for the closing hymn. After the service, Brother Phillips went up to him and said, "Brother Bob, tell me what was going on. I noticed that you got up and left, and then you came back." He said, "Well, Pastor, I need to go get a haircut." A haircut? Couldn't you have taken care of that before the service? And he said, "Pastor, I didn't need it before the service." That is a long sermon. The title of today's message is called Seva, the art of selfless service. You may not be familiar with the term Seva. It is the Sanskrit word for selfless service. Daniel Scott is a yogi and a teacher in Hinduism, and he says it this way: Seva is a Sanskrit word meaning selfless service, or work performed without any thought of reward or repayment. In ancient India, Seva was believed to help one's spiritual growth and at the same time contribute to the improvement of a community. This is the art of giving with no need to receive, where the act itself is a gift to everyone involved, including the giver. Seva is the art of blessed action. Ram Dass explains this beautifully. Helping out is not some special skill. It is not the domain of rare individuals. It is not confined to a single part of our lives. We simply heed the call of that natural impulse within, and we follow it where it leads. There's a very short poem by the beloved Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore. And he says this: "I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy." Isn't that beautiful? In Unity, we teach that service is a spiritual practice. What do we mean by this? A spiritual practice is designed to be an action that we take that will put us in alignment with the truth of our being spiritually. Because in case, I don't know about you, but you've ever had one of those Mondays when it doesn't feel like the power and presence of God are right there where you are? I've had those. And so in those times when we don't have the feeling and the experience of God's presence and power being within us, it is so wonderful to have a practice, to have a tool that we can then pick up and go, well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to act as if, even though I don't feel it or necessarily can't touch it right now, I know it's true and I'm going to act as though it were true. And so we sit in meditation and we withdraw our awareness from the conditionality of life and we focus our awareness inward, where that mind that was in Christ Jesus is also in us. This is the practice of meditation. We do the practice of prayer, where the conditions may say that we are lacking in some way in health or finances. And yet we go to the spiritual truth that the abundance and the fullness and the wholeness of God is my life expressing, and I claim the truth. And that is a spiritual practice. So why would we say that service is spiritual practice? And here's why. There's only one of us here. There's only one life, one power, one presence that is the life of God, that expresses itself in infinite forms, and that includes you and me. And when we serve one another, we come back to oneness and connection. We are showing ourselves the truth of who we are by serving each other. There's I don't know where this came from, I couldn't find the origins of it, but there was a painting that it was a picture of a lot of people sitting at a banquet, and they had spoons that were too long, and they could not get the food into their mouths, and it was called hell. And then the next one, there was a painting that was exactly the same scene, except that the people were feeding each other, and it was called heaven. It is, yeah, and amen. Good night. Thank you. Glad you like that. But that's really what it's about. That when we serve each other and when we allow others to serve us, we step into the truth of our connection. We show that, yes, we are all brothers and sisters in spirit. Yes, we are all expressions of God's love and life and power and beauty and joy. Now, nowadays, it's really easy to follow what's shown on media, and you would not believe that we're all serving each other in love and peace and power and beauty and joy, right? It's so easy to see our opposition, our againstness, the division in politics between the nations. And what I want to tell you is that I think we're doing pretty well. You may not, but just stick with me for a moment. If you take an evolutionary view of life and you begin to see things through a longer time lens, you might see that the human race isn't morally broken and foundering. What we are is not grown up yet. If you poll, I know Cindy in her classes, she has often polled people, where do you think the human race is in consciousness? It's about 13, 14 years old. You know, that adolescent starting to get some power, but not wielding it too skillfully. I believe that that's actually what's occurring, is that in our collective consciousness, we are just immature. But a few of us are growing up a little faster. And we get to lead the way. We get to remember this truth, and the way we treat each other is part of it. Jonathan Haidt, in his book, The Righteous Mind, he says that we are 90% chimp and 10% bee. What that means is, evolutionarily speaking, our nearest relatives are the chimpanzees. And we share many, many qualities of intelligence with the chimpanzees. Don't point any fingers or elbow anybody. But the thing that the higher apes are missing is this collaborative, cooperative ability. You'll never see two chimps carrying a log together. They don't have that capacity. And yet, Homo sapiens has the ability to work together for a unified goal, and that is what allowed our species to flourish greater than any other. Again, we don't do it perfectly. But the bee, on the other hand, is always working in service to the hive. Every part doing its part, every member doing its part to serve a greater good. And we have that too. And that's the part that we want to nurture by our spiritual practice of service. When we offer kindness, when we offer an act of work with no thought of payment, we are stepping into our wholeness and our oneness in a beautiful way. But this is not what the ego would tell us is important. Do you ever remember the game as a kid, King of the Hill? That is actually a good example of the egoic view of life. The way we did it, we had a high place or something we stood on, and the person who could stand there on the top was the king of the hill, and they would vanquish all comers. And then everybody else's job was to bring down the king so they could stand up there and be king of the hill or queen of the hill. This is the way the ego sees the world. One up, one down. For me to win, you have to lose. This is false. This is a false and a limited understanding, but we will see this in our world of hierarchy. We'll see this in our world of using others to get our gain. And so to use service, I've called it, service is the kryptonite of the ego. Any other nerds out there? You know what kryptonite is? Okay. Kryptonite was the piece of the Superman's planet, and when he would be near it, he would lose his powers under our yellow sun. Krypton had a red sun, but I digress. But once we will, and again, it's a practice. You may not feel like serving others. You may feel like playing king of the hill, getting your way. But if you will begin to choose and act as though we were all one, as though we were all connected, the ego's power will begin to diminish in our lives. And this is powerful and necessary for us to grow. Blame is fun, though, right? Oh, some people go, yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun. There's, again, this idea of maturity. I had John and I had a chance to spend Saturday and Friday. When were we there? Friday in Galveston with my 6-year-old Micah and the moms, and it was quite an event with a 6-year-old all day in Galveston. And we had a full day. We did the pleasure pier and the rides, as she called them. We went to lunch, and we went back to the beach for about 3 hours, and then back to the rides at the pleasure pier, and then to dinner. And the whole time she kept talking about there was a show at Herman Park that night, and she wanted to go to it. We knew that was never going to happen. No way, but we thought we'll just wear her out, and she'll forget about it. So the show was supposed to start at 8 o'clock. At 8 o'clock, we're still on the island. We're having dinner, and she says, "Are we going to go to the show?" I mean, 4 adults and 1 6-year-old, and she's got us outnumbered. I mean, it's incredible. And I say, "Well, no, sweetie, it's too late. We did too many other fun things." And she's like, she looked at me, she said, "You're eating too slow." Blame. Something bad has happened, I'm going to find somebody to blame. Well, then somebody at the table pointed out that we had actually just chosen a different way to use our time. And this little kid is a water bug. She was in that water for 3 hours. We chose to have more time there. We were trying to explain to a 6-year-old, we made this choice that you wanted to stay at the beach. And she looked, "But you letted me." And that's what our ego will do. We'll look for someone to blame for our experience. And again, if we will try and serve one another in love and kindness and compassion, the ego will be diminished. The other thing I want to really kind of focus on to complete today's message is this idea, the other way the ego comes in through the back door. You know, we say sometimes, we use it as a metaphor now, but it's a real thing. When you're on a plane, they'll say, if the oxygen mask drops, place it over your own face first, and then tend to the children. Now, moms, that probably doesn't feel natural. And I bet if that ever happened, you might have a hard time doing that, wouldn't you? Because it's our nature to care. And our culture would tell us that that's actually selfish, to take care of yourself first. And many spiritual traditions would also teach us that taking care of ourselves is a selfish act. And yet, what I'm about to share with you, I believe, is beautifully grounded in spiritual principle. That it is when we overcare, thank you, Reverend Mindy, for that phrase, that when we overcare without tending to our own needs, that too is the ego, and it will lead us to resentment and blame and depletion. And you cannot give from an empty cup. You cannot give from an empty cup. And so for us to really be in our spiritual practice of service, we must serve ourselves. We must attend to our own self-care. I will tell you, the ego will always seek to separate. The soul will always seek to unite and connect. And we are in no place to unite and connect if we're in depletion. There's a beautiful story of service and leadership in the New Testament, in the Gospel of John. It's near the end of Jesus' ministry, and he had gathered his disciples for a meal. And somewhere in the meal, the scripture tells us in the story that he took off his outer clothes, he wrapped a towel around his waist, and he asked for a bowl of water, and he began to wash his disciples' feet. This task was necessary in that day. They didn't have Uber. And so they had to get from one place to another. They would walk on dirty streets. They didn't even have asphalt angels. They just kind of had to get there. And so they'd come into someone's home and they would be dragging all of the dirt of the journey with them. And this task of washing a guest's feet was left to the lowest servant in the household. And so for the beloved and revered teacher to assume this lowly place of service was... It just threw the hierarchical mind of his disciples into disorder. They didn't know what to do with it. And it said that when it came to Peter, always the impetuous one, he said, "No, Lord, I will never let you wash my feet." And Jesus said, if I do not wash your feet, you have no part of me. And then he said, "Well, then wash everything." And Jesus said, "No, we're not doing that." I don't think that's the way he said it. It was in Aramaic, but you know. The symbology, the metaphysical meaning of washing the feet is this. The feet are the way that our spiritual principles take action into the world. And we do collect the dirt and the grit of the journey. And Jesus, by washing the feet of his disciples, was restoring them to the purity of their purpose and their work. And to have the beloved teacher and leader do it, he was crushing the idea of the one-up, one-down, king of the mountain consciousness. And he began to show us that the leader is also the servant. This is not just for some to serve, it is for all of us. There's a beautiful short writing called The Quality of Greatness by Rebecca Barlow Jordan. The quality of greatness is not found in wealth or fame or in leadership. Those who are truly great will not wear crowns upon their heads, but rather towels around their waists. They are the ones who have developed a servant's heart, always loving and living to bring joy to others. They are the ones who view their gifts and value their abilities as treasures from God, but who choose willingly to place others' interests and desires ahead of their own. Mark 9:35, anyone who wants to be first must be the very last and the servant of all. And so you can pick up the paradox and even the contradiction here. We're told to put other needs before us, and then I've already told you to put your needs before others. What is the answer? The answer is wisdom to know what is needed when. Wisdom. That if we are depleted, we must attend to our own needs. And if we're feeling isolated and disconnected, then we must get out of our own needs and attend to another. And the ego dissipates. In the 12-step service work, it's emphasized from the very first day of recovery. And I remember a friend of mine was telling me that he came into recovery from alcohol addiction and his life was a total train wreck. And he needed help in every area, finances, with his relationships, with everything. And his sponsor just kept telling him to do service work and come to meetings. And he said it sounded like his house was on fire and someone was telling him to mow the yard. And yet, the sponsor was wise, and the heart and mind became shifted into a right alignment with reality, and then the work of recovery was better able to be done. I wanted to share an exemplar of great service for you, and I just knew I was going to talk about Mother Teresa, Saint Teresa of Calcutta. She's one of my spiritual sheroes, and I've spoken about her here before, and I love her, and yet it wasn't quite feeling right. And it's partly because after her death, as noble and as committed as she was to serving the least of these, there was a bit of the empty cup going there. And it doesn't make me disrespect her. I respect her all the more, and I love her and for what she brought to our planet in terms of kindness and compassion. But I wanted to share a different exemplar today. Oprah Winfrey. Both she and Mother Teresa are amazing exemplars of giving, but they're not the same. When we think of selflessness, it is Mother Teresa that might come to mind, forsaking all goods and comforts of earth. Even when she won the Nobel Peace Prize, she gave the $192,000 to the poor. She didn't keep a cent of it. She truly is a saint. And we might feel that if we are to practice selfless service, that's what we must do. Give everything we have in service. But I don't think so. And so I offer Oprah as an exemplar. She also came from hardship, a childhood of poverty and abuse, and she succeeded in life because of her deep authenticity, love, commitment, and kindness. She has received nearly every award and reward the world offers. She is the world's first self-made billionaire woman. How is she selfless then? Because she gives from the overflow. She has given millions of dollars, countless hours to helping the least of these, the same as Mother Teresa. I apologize. I've been having a little bit of an issue here. Maybe I'll just talk about it. Oh, there we go. And she has also spoken plainly about her own struggle with self-care and self-image. To be selfless in the spiritual sense does not mean giving yourself away. It means to release the less true selves and to give your true self away. And in that giving, we are not emptied, we are fulfilled. We have some images here of that kind of giving. I'm going to invite Gary to come out and play some music. And these are photographs of our own selfless givers, our own Seva practitioners giving into our community this past year. I can play. Could we have all of our volunteers please stand and let us recognize and honor you? All of our volunteers. God bless you. We love you. Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.